Welcome to the Infinite Imaginarium. We never just hear music. Our experience of it is saturated in cultural expectations, personal memory, and the need to move. The most sophisticated technology we have available to peer inside the brain suggests that listening to music calls on a broad range of faculties, testifying to how deeply its perception is interwoven with the other aspects of human experience. Beyond just what we hear, what we see, what we expect and how we move, and the sum of our life experiences, all contribute to how we experience music. Infinite Imaginarium proudly presents IamConley. Conley is a Canadian folk singer-songwriter based in Dublin.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Infinite Imaginarium, and today we have Satorid D, and we have a guest on the show today, Sandrine.
Yes.
And we just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about your music, what got you into folk music. When was sort of the passion of wanting to create your own music sort of ignited within you? If you could sort of tell us a little bit about how you got into the music, or what your kind of inspirations were to start creating your own music.
Yeah, so I started playing and learning music really young. I started singing at 5, and I went to an elementary school, which was a music school. So we would do singing, violin, piano every day, stuff like that. So it was part of my life really early on. And one of the things that actually got me into singing, like besides school, was Disney movies for me. Just singing with Disney princess and all that. And past that, I actually, one of the things that first inspired me to create music was actually parody songs. There was local radio stations in my hometown where they would take a popular song and make something funny with it. And back then, the idea for me was like, oh, I would love to do that too. I would like to combine music and humor. That was kind of like my first ever, the first time I wanted to create something was for humor. But I didn't really actually do that. So fast forward, years and years, when after I left elementary school, I stopped doing the classical music, so I was doing classical music training as a kid. Then I stopped and I went into just pop music, stuff like that. Then I thought maybe I wanted to be a pop star, but in the end I don't. And I tried so many different styles of music. When I went to college, I did some jazz as well. And then I joined a rock band. And eventually, the way that I found that folk was kind of the genre for me that was calling for me was through discovering Joni Mitchell, who's one of my all-time favorite artists now, and Bon Iver, which he was kind of introduced to me by a musician friend and became one of my favorite musicians. And so through really liking these artists, I started to create folk, and it really clicked. It really, really clicked. So since those days, so I would say that's maybe 7 years ago, that's when I started doing folk, and I knew that I wanted to keep doing that.
Yeah, I mean, listening to your voice, and I don't ever like to compare singers to other singers, but for some reason you had a slight sort of, there was an element of Stevie Nicks about your voice, and she's another, along with the song Jolene, she's another one of my most favourite artists. And you kind of reminded me a little bit of her.
I've heard that before. I tend to find that I don't see it because I feel like she's so much more, she has like more raspiness. She's a bit more rock than I sound, but I can still see it.
Yeah, she's kind of.
But you're not the first one who says that.
Bonnie Tyler-esque, she's got more rough. You've got a very, you haven't got that roughness to your voice. I would have to agree with that.
No.
You have got a stunning voice, by the way. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Really, really good. I would have loved to have sat on YouTube and just listened to all your songs, but I never had time. But I will, at some point, I will go through, because I was really enjoying what I heard. It was great.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Kind of how I got to know you a little bit. It was Missy who kind of tagged me in on, it was an outtake, I guess. You were doing Don't Worry, Be Happy, and then your neighbor was like playing a game or something, and you could hear him like in the background.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, I loved your voice and how the whole Don't Worry, Be Happy was coming through.
Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy.
When I saw the video later on YouTube, you were reading a book. What was the book were you reading?
I was reading The God Delusion by Dawkins.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I was feeling a bit silly, and I just made a video where I'm doing absolutely nothing but just reading a book.
Yeah.
Did you say the book was called The God Delusion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's an interesting title. What's that book about? Because I don't know the book, I haven't read the book myself, but when you said The God Delusion, I thought that's a really interesting title.
So it's by Richard Dawkins, and he's a very known atheist. He's written a few books where he discusses atheism, and I won't go too much into it. And I haven't even finished the book actually, but just he likes to go in depth with how he sees religion and how he sees atheism and such, and that's something that I kind of abide to.
Well, for me, what I liked about that video, I like your style, first off, and then it was cool because for me, the way I connected with that is that one of the things that I do, that like a simple joy of mine, is just sitting underneath a tree and reading a book as well. And so that I kind of like had that connection right there. And what I also like about your music is, well, there's a quote by Nietzsche. It says, "Without music, life would be a mistake," and that kind of like has that thread between the "Don't Worry and Be Happy" and then another song you did with a collab that says "I Don't Care."
Yeah, with my friend Chris.
Yeah, that was a really great song. I like.
I'm glad you like it. It's actually it's my friend Chris. He lives in California. He's an actual California cowboy. You know, he lives on a farm. He writes country, western songs, folk a little bit as well. And he wrote this one. And he asked me to be the duet girl with him. So we shot that video in Montreal together because he used to be in Montreal.
Don't care about work. I don't care about pace. I don't care about money. If it don't wear your face. I don't care about moonlight. I don't care about the sun. I don't care about stress. I don't care about fun. 'Cause baby, I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call me love.
Don't care about the movies. I don't care who goes. Don't care about circus if it ain't your show. Don't care about time. Don't care about schedules. Don't care if I'm simple. For anything special. 'Cause baby, I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call me love. I just want you to call
went back home. So that's the story behind that little song. Yeah.
And I guess too. So you moved from Montreal to Ireland, Dublin.
Yeah, I'm in Dublin right now. Yeah.
So what sparked that journey for yourself?
So my interest in Ireland, it just stemmed from a lot of people in my life, mostly people I don't know actually, just coming up to me telling me that they think I look really Irish and stuff like that. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand what that was supposed to mean because I didn't know anything about Ireland. But from hearing those comments so often, I ended up, looking up what was Ireland like, and then I realized how beautiful it was. And then, so that sparked my interest, and then I was like, well, maybe I do have an Irish heritage, but I don't really know about it. So started getting interested in that, and I actually still don't know if I do have any Irish roots at all. But it doesn't matter. I ended up actually meeting some Irish people in college. They came on student exchange. Really, really had a good connection with these people. One of them is a musician here. All kinds of people really, and that made me want to come over even more because then I just felt like I had that connection with those people and I wanted to pursue that. And so I was like, okay, I'm into what this place looks like. I'm into the kind of culture that I've learned about over the years, and now I'm also into keeping up these friendships and relationships with these people that I've met. So that's kind of all of which brought me here.
Southern Ireland is beautiful, actually, and one of the things I like about Southern Ireland is they like to keep up the old traditions. The old school pubs, with people in there playing the fiddle, and they like to keep it all completely traditional and old school. And even in England, the pub culture has become very commercial, so it's kind of like chains of places that are all exactly the same, rather than the little old worldy pubs that have been there sort of since medieval, well, not the medieval times, an exaggeration, but you know what I mean, like they've been there for a long time, since the Victorian era and stuff like that. But Southern Ireland has got loads of those places, scattered all over the place, which is lovely. And I've got Celtic roots myself, but I've only actually been there once in my whole life, so I'd love to go there again because it really is a green place. They call it the Emerald Isle.
It is.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah. And what's really cool is, if you look on Google, you see these pictures of Ireland and you're like, okay, this looks great. And then you come here, but it actually looks like that. It's not just on the photos. It is like that. And that's so great. It really made me happy when I arrived. And I was like, this is not just a dream. It's really that beautiful.
The people are very friendly in Ireland.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful.
And I remember I went with my friend who is Irish back in 1999. People were so friendly. It's like everywhere you go, it's like going to somebody's house and then sort of welcoming you in. But you never get that anywhere else but Ireland. It's a great place.
What's funny too is even, because I had to go through, some very formal, like going to these offices where I have to get immigration card and all that kind of stuff. And I'm used to doing that, back home for whatever paperwork, and it's always very formal. But here, I go there, and some of those government workers were dressed really casually. I was surprised, and they were so friendly. Like, I completely missed out on when they called my name, and I should have probably just started over and waited hours, and they just put me through, and they were smiling. They weren't even being annoyed with me because I was being a mess. And that was a new experience for me. Like, they say Canadians are friendly, but the Irish really take the cake on that one.
Yeah, they are super, super friendly. It's like, you can't, going to Southern Ireland is something you have to do and experience. You can't really explain it to anyone that hasn't experienced it.
Yeah, we're going to take Infinite Imaginarium International.
Yeah,
I'm
we
here
need
in
to get the
LA.
Imaginarium stuff.
Yeah.
We'll start off in Ireland. They'd love it there.
That would actually be really cool. Yeah, we have a vision of taking our Infinite Imaginarium. So basically, Infinite Imaginarium, not only that we have this show, but we want like just a creative workspace. And we had like this vision of kind of like having this like bus and like driving it around. Actually, Nikki had a dream about this.
I did. I actually had this dream about us going around in this bus. It was initially in the dream. It was me, Bill Ottman, and Satorid. I think Lee Travis might have been there as well. I can't quite remember. But yeah, we were literally going around in this bus. It was a bit like that. It reminds me of that film. I can't remember what it's called now. Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Like pretends to be a writer, but he's kind of only like 14 or something, 13 or 14. Well, it was a bit like that. I don't know whether that was what triggered the dream, that film. I don't think we were really doing anything though. We were just dreaming and singing. That was about it, really.
Yeah. I'm hoping to do a proper Irish tour this summer maybe, or the next one. I'm here for a while, so it'll happen. I have my friends who are musicians. I know they have a band, so maybe it'll look a bit like that too.
Yeah, that would be cool. Actually, so what are you working on right now?
So me right now, I'm sort of reinventing my approach to folk and my whole live performance because I'm solo and I want to stay solo, but then I'm lacking a bit of dimension. I find that when I arrive on stage, I want my songs to have a bit more life that a band could bring, but I don't want a band. I want to stay solo, so I'm sort of working on this whole new thing where I want to create all these visuals to project while I'm performing and pre-record some synth parts and a little bit of rhythm to play in the background with the projections, and then I'm gonna perform acoustic with harmonizers and a bit of looping on top of that. So it's sort of like me trying to be my own band using my computer and some synth and the whole the digital world of things. So I guess it becomes folk, but it's like synth folk, it's like digital folk, something like that. That's my new idea. It's really, it's still a very early stage, but my vision is getting clearer each day about that. So it's gonna start coming together. I'm probably gonna show little bits and pieces on social media as I'm putting it together and getting it ready to.
Do you have like a sort of a method to the way you write songs or create music? I'm wondering what zone you kind of got yourself into do the creating.
Yeah, I do have kind of a system. It's not always the same, but it's often similar, where the songs usually come from stories, like actual real personal stories, feelings that I'm actually feeling that I want to draw from. And so I'll be fiddling around on the guitar usually, and I'll find chords that for me match that feeling or that story in my mind. So I start sort of painting that picture, that musical picture, with the chords. Once I have a few chords lined up, it's not always, verse, chorus, and everything, but at least a few chords, like a real start point. When I have that, I usually have a few ideas that come, like a few sentences to start the song with. And oftentimes what I'll do is it'll be kind of like doing a quick drawing of something. So you have a lot of things in place, like the chords are there, some sentences are there, and then sometimes most of the song will come at once, and then I just have to fill in a few blanks. Sometimes the idea is there and it's really solid. I have all the melody in my head, but I'm still lacking words. And this is happening right now, so because I've been writing this new album and most of the songs are ready, but all of them have these holes that I'm still having a hard time filling in for words mostly. So that it's always kind of like the last step is finishing the lyrics.
Sometimes I find, if you're working on something creative and you get to that point where you just think, I don't know where the creative flow is somehow blocked, and so you can't move forward. Yeah. I just think, right, I'm going to leave it. It's taken me probably 30 years to realise that that's the best course of action. And then I just suddenly thought, actually, as soon as I reach that point where that creative flow is stopped, I just do something else. And the minute that I do something else, it just pops into my head, or something. I just think, oh my god, that like the light bulb moment occurs, and I think, right.
Sometimes, so this has worked for me countless times, that's for sure. Oh, sometimes, so I put the song down, and then, so for example, back in Montreal, I was busking almost every day, and I would play these songs even though they were incomplete, and I would just mumble in the parts that weren't complete. But then over time, just me mumbling stuff, I came up with sounds and then words that ended up filling those spaces. So sometimes it's just repetition, just letting it come eventually, but playing the song anyways. Other times, what helps me is actually sometimes I just really want to finish that song. Like, I'm sick and tired of not finishing a certain song, and I want to start putting it together for recording. So I pick up a thesaurus, and I just read a bunch of words. And I personally find that just words alone can inspire images and stories for me. So the thesaurus can be my best friend in terms of finishing these little song projects. It doesn't have to be me looking up exactly a specific word. It can just be reading through it until something catches my interest and sparks the whole idea, and I can finally finish the song.
Yeah, I like that. What I used to do a lot too, so it's kind of like this whole thing about like there's nothing really random in the world, and I used to throw this what's called the I Ching. It's an ancient Chinese oracle thing. What I learned from there is like, there's certain things that kind of like, even when I'm walking through the day, like a lot of times I used to take the bus to work. I'll have my notebook, but I would just always just be listening. And there's certain phrases or certain things or certain words that for some reason just caught my attention, and then I'll write it down. Having no idea of like why I like that phrase or why I like that word. And it's not until like later when I got into my creative zone, I'm like, oh, that's why that word, it connected to some memory of with my friends, or it connected to what I'm thinking. Like the minute that we're in it, that I make all these connections, like, oh, this reminds me of this book I read, this reminds me of this song, this reminds me of this thing I saw. And I just like having like all these like different connections that happen, and I make the connection like later, but I had like no idea like why it connected to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been trying to and say trying because I've yet to really do it, but I want to start doing vlog type videos to add on my YouTube channel, just to let people in a bit more on like who I am and why I do what I do, maybe connect more to the audience. But it's like I have a hard time doing it without writing it down first, but then I write it down and then I start recording and it doesn't feel natural anymore. I don't know, it's like I'm trying to script and then maybe I'll go off script at some point, but at this stage I keep just recording videos for nothing and then I don't post them.
In the past, when we used to do the shows, Satorid would start recording without telling us, because at the beginning we were all quite nervous because we were sort of a bit amateur, and we didn't really know what's going on. We were like, it's the fear of the unknown really, until you've done it, and then you know how it plays out. So to create that natural flow, he would just sort of hit record, and then at the end of it, he'd be like, yeah, I've been recording the whole time. And we were just having this chat, and it was really great. We just thought it was a key part of the show. But yeah,
that's often some of the best parts. Yeah, if you don't even know that it's recording, and you're actually just going on a very natural, meaningful conversation, and then you capture that. It's usually even better than anything else you try to stage.
Yeah, that's always my favorite thing to do, especially early on in the show. It'd be like 30 minutes into it, I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm recording. But yeah, it's kind of interesting what you're saying about your video blog, because I think that's cool to have, to give part of your creative process. And I think this is part of not only that like people like to consume media, but they like to be in on the inner working of whatever their artist is like doing.
Yeah, I mean, my main inspiration to start blogging has been this YouTube musician girl. She's quite young. It's Dodie Clark, and she does these songs, and then she has these videos where she's just opening up because she's got, you know, like mental health struggles and this and that, and she's very open about it, and it really helps you understand her songs, and it's really, really working for her because the people who follow her, they really, really care about what she's putting out, and they really care about what she's saying. So me seeing that, like in the past year, I sort of discovered her channel, and I saw what she was doing, and it inspired me to do something similar, where I want to just let people in on what might have happened in my life that led to a certain song, or how I feel day to day, which is why I create certain things. This is kind of like my starting point, or like some kind of storytellers kind of concept, where maybe when I'm introducing a new song, instead of just playing the song, I could talk 5 minutes about the song and then play it for the people, like just an acoustic version. People can really actually appreciate the song and where it's coming from.
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea.
Kind of reminds me of this thing that I read the other day. It's an article on music, and it says, beyond just what we hear, see, and expect, and how we move, the sum of our experience of lives contribute to how we experience music. And for me, like, I have a lot of songs that spark a certain time and moment of my life. Like, for instance, Pink Floyd is a very heavy group that I love, but some of their songs are even hard for me to like listen to now because they invoke that experience of me and my friends in our early 20s, and of this one specific person that we shared all these memories and moments together. And so, like, when I hear like Wish You Were Here, that invokes like all this, love, pain, experience that we all had. That's something I think goes into what you're saying. Like, any artwork, any good artwork will have that depth of the artist's experience, but also to the audience experience. And I think unknowingly, that's what like ties us together. Like, when I was hearing "Don't Stay," one of your songs, and I really liked the whole mood of that song, and I don't know, it just for some reason it spoke to me a little bit larger than some of the other songs for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, it's cool for me to hear that, because besides just my friends saying, "Oh yeah, good job, this is a very nice song," it's nice to hear what other people are experiencing with what I'm putting out there. Because, obviously me, I have my reasons to write that song, I have my experience of it. And I really like knowing what other people's experience of those songs is, and how they might relate to it in the same way, in the same kind of feeling that I have, or it can be something completely different for someone else. And it's nice to have that feedback.
One of the things I really liked, back in the day when we had vinyl, was that the album covers would tell a story in itself. So quite often album covers of things would be like, that would be part of, for me, when I was buying music, that would be part of the fun aspect of the bit that I love the most. It's like studying the album cover. I'd be like looking at every detail and sort of analysing, what does that mean? And then if you did a bit of research on the album, or there was sometimes information about the songs, like you were talking about doing your video blog, or like talking a little bit about a song and what inspires you to write it, or the meaning behind it. It just made me think of that when you were saying about telling a story and talking about the creation of something and where it comes from. We don't really get that as much.
One thing I've noticed in regards to album covers these days, or just any music related artwork, is that more and more what's happening right now is artists are putting out singles or like quick EPs and not full albums, and they're putting out like a picture for every song kind of thing, instead of like one big concept album with one very elaborate art piece to top it off and be the cover. And it's a new approach that can be very interesting to explore, in terms of like, what if each song has a really epic art piece to go with it? What if I put out an album, and if you buy the rigid copy, the solid copy, whatever you call that, it has a booklet full of art for each song or something. But obviously nowadays it's more digital, But I think, yeah, I also love how elaborate the artwork used to be for album covers, and I'm almost thinking like,
Yeah.
I want to do that, but now let's make art book for an album or something.
I think that's an amazing idea. I think most people who appreciate music, people who love music, and I'm not talking about, in the mainstream so much. I'm not saying that some of the mainstream music isn't great, but real kind of music lovers are likely to be into art as well. So I think that idea would work. It's just a case of kind of working out the best way of producing something like that, or how would it be done?
Yeah. I think too, what I'm thinking about when we're talking about this, but that's really where of having like the kind of like visuals to go along with your performances to kind of like give this more depth to it. That's where that kind of playing with that idea of let's say the experiences that go into that song, right? So that song is not only just that song, but it's like maybe it's the experience when you were little, or maybe experience of some heartbreak or whatever, but also to that song as you play it more and you go to different places playing it. It also kind of what you were saying, sometimes you have that idea and then you fill in the gaps, right? Of like, okay, this kind of word fits into there, and it branches out like that. That to me, like what I'm just seeing in my head, the visuals are like the whole flashback of that experience of that one song, of like how it all kind of like, and I think too, as you move forward, it can kind of like grow with it,
I've had this idea for a while as I said, I'm trying to do this new album, and one of the ideas I've had regarding the release of it is to record the album and then instead of putting it out right away, to reach out to some artists, and I have plenty of artist friends, and I'm sure I can find a million more online, and to have these artists listen to my album and create work inspired by it from their own perspective of it, and then when I'm releasing the album, I can share everyone, like all these artists' take on it, like a visual take on my music, and share that, and so it allows me to share my music and someone else's art and to expand on everyone's understanding and perspective on the songs.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we're talking about here. It's kind of like what we do with the shows, isn't it? We have the show, we have the kind of the structure, the format, the topics we discuss, and then you create a remix story which is kind of encapsulates everything that we talked about and discussed in a series of visual images, music, and it's great that you take all this different art and then you create new art from the original artwork, which kind of makes me think, is there actually any original artwork? Does it exist? Because I kind of feel like every piece of artwork that has ever been created, whether it's music or on a canvas, then or writing, that person, that artist is inspired by something to what we would perceive as an original piece of artwork. So it's kind of like, is there actually any original artwork? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've pondered that question before, and I'm sort of thinking like everything we do is always inspired by someone from before, and that's probably been the case ever since very, very first artwork that humanity's ever done. So with that in mind, I guess the only original art ever is nature itself. That's sort of my only answer to that.
Yeah, that's kind of why I use the symbol I use for Satorid. It's from an ancient, I think the cave painting was in France, and it's one of the earliest cave paintings. But the thing that's different, it's the bee shaman guy, and what makes that distinct is that one is not a naturalistic painting. Like before, the cave paintings were of like a prairie or the hunt of hunting, what antelope or whatever it was, and it's just like scenery. And this one is like something that's definitely like weird and creative. My own like take, or this is something I always say, but I think it goes to the core of how I make sense of whatever we're talking about is so the main thing in the universe is nameless, so I call it beauty. Now beauty is beauty, that's all there is to it. If you get interested in yourself, then you're stuck with yourself and you're stuck with your death. But if you get interested in beauty, then you launch onto something mysterious inside your soul that grows and grows like the secret of the same thought until you're it. And that beauty is something that is a deep nature, and it takes on many different forms. But once you experience it, you don't know why it like calls to you, it attracts you, but it's something that ties all of us together. And I think when you were probably little and you first heard music or whatever, you don't know why you're so attracted to it. And same thing with Nikki, when she saw some visuals, she didn't know why she was attracted to it. But it's that timeless, deep nature that ties everything together, nature and this wonder that is the human experience. But we're deeply embedded in nature, and it's this universal thing that is nameless, that it's hard to put into words, but that's why we express it in music and in artwork and whatever it is. And I think humanity is always playing and wrestling with that.
Yeah, no, I like what you said.
Yeah, I think the key thing with any form of creation, and this is one of the most difficult things as an artist to do, is to share your work with other people, because that kind of keeps the creative flow going. For years I didn't paint or do anything. I had an awareness, an ability to paint, and I knew I had this ability, but I didn't share it with anybody because I was too embarrassed. People didn't like it, or they thought I was stupid or weird or whatever. And then one day I just thought, no, this is ridiculous. I'm just gonna come out as an artist. I'm just gonna reveal my work and just see what happens. It doesn't really matter whether people, everybody's gonna have a different perception based on their own kind of mind maps and individual experiences as to how they look at something, how they resonate with it. But I think the key is to share as much as possible, because that helps the artist create more things. It can, like we were saying before, if you have an awareness of other people's art and creations and things around you and nature, then you kind of become inspired from it. So yeah, my final thought is to just not keep it to yourself. Be brave and just come out and show people what your creations are. Share with people.
That's really interesting that you bring that up, because later after I heard your song Don't Stay, I read in the description of the YouTube that I forgot exactly how you phrased it, but you're a little self-conscious because it's a little bit more you said slow and different than what you normally do. And I think that's kind of what Nikki was saying, is something that I feel too, like sometimes when I share a certain poem or I do a certain thing, but that's when I know like I should share it.
You never know what people are going to get from something. I think if you just create something and you think, oh, it's a mess, whether it's music or whether it's art, painting art, and you feel reluctant, I don't want to share that. Like you were saying, Satorid, that is the time you should share it. That's the time to be brave and do it.
Yeah, I guess on a bit of a psychological note, in the same vein of what you're saying, is I realized, so before, I'd say like a few years ago when I did my first EP and stuff like that, and how I was back then, I was the kind of person who thought that maybe I had to be different to be likable, and so, same thing with my music. If I felt compelled to write something sad, I felt that I should edit that and make it into something else, or something more upbeat, so that would be more fun for others. And then, in the past few years, what I've been discovering is that I am more likable when I'm authentic, and so is my work and my music. And the more I've been allowing myself to put out work that I might be more self-conscious about because it's maybe slower than what I think is fun, or maybe the topic is very personal, the more I'm actually connecting to others or finding a real audience. So this is opening the door for me to actually share my truth of who I am and the truth of my work and how it's actually the way it's actually coming through for me, even if it's a sad, slow song. Maybe that's actually like
I think
valuable for others. So
artists are very brave people and courageous people, because we're literally sort of bearing our soul. Write something down, something poetical, write a song, and then share it with people. people. You know, it's literally coming right from the inner core of our being. And I think that's why a lot of people quite struggle to reveal that part of themselves, because they feel it's a very vulnerable position to put yourself in, because you're literally showing people who you are, who you really are. And most people walk around and are not authentic. Not that they don't want to be. I think everybody wants to be authentic, but people struggle because they worry about their peers and people think it's weird, or will they fit in? They struggle with the fact that they may not fit in, or they'll be somehow ostracised or isolated for having those thoughts and feelings. So, you know, I think artists are quite brave in that respect.
I like to thank everybody for their time. Always having fun in the Infinite Imaginarium, but definitely we should stay in touch, and it was really nice to meet you and get to know you a little bit more. It was cool.
Yeah,
thanks
for having me on this podcast. It's my first time on a podcast, and I did enjoy it. So, all right.
Bye.